Hello, this is Spellbinder with this GetLiberty.org's story, Americans for Limited Government. This story is called A Dangerous Turn, put out today, the 11th of 2011, January, by Bill Wilson. This is very strange because these people, as soon as this unspeakable crime in Arizona happened, they already had bills readied for gun control. It almost makes me think they planned this because of these bills. I don't know if they just make these bills up and hang on to them and hope something happens, or they plan something to happen in the future and just hang on to these bills. But this is how it goes. It has all taken such a sad and predictable course. A mentally deranged individual commits an act of unspeakable violence. Within minutes, the professional left starts efforts to place blame on conservative and Republicans and right-wing radio shows, talk shows, piously demanding some solution that, surprise, gives them tactical advantage in the future policy fights. Let's call it for what it is, a shameless, callous attempt to use the tragedy of others for gain, political or otherwise. This renders these people as contemptible as the shooter, but it makes these self-appointed moralists something else. It makes them extremely dangerous. Example 1 is no less than the number 2 or 3, depending on how you count. Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives, Representative James Clyburn, had no compunction whatsoever of puffing out in stark detail what he wanted to see coming from the violence in Arizona. Mr. Clyburn wants to silence all opposition. He wants to use the incident to install the third world bullying and censorship he so cleverly desires. Clyburn is quoted as calling for America to rethink perimeters of free speech. He wants standards put in place to ensure balanced media coverage. Of course, who decides those standards? The government, naturally. Mr. Clyburn wants to decide, and given the fact that his daughter sits on the powerful Federal Communications Commission, nepotism in government, the same bureaucracy that is currently ignoring a federal court order to take control of the internet, he has the ability to make his authoritarian rant a reality. Perhaps Mr. Clyburn was asleep last week when the U.S. Constitution was read on the floor of the House. How else can you explain his unfamiliarity with the words, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, no matter"? For Mr. Clyburn and others of his ilk, little things like constitutional protection cannot be allowed to stand in the way of their gaggling of all dissent. Example 2 is much more subtle than the ravings of James Clyburn, but in many ways more insidious. On Sunday, Paul Krugman, the high priest of insane economic notion and resident guru of the progressive hard left, attempts to place all blame for a climate of hate on the GOP. Krugman writes, "Where's that toxic retort coming from? Let's not make a false pretense of balance. It's coming overwhelmingly from the right." His bottom line prescription to the Republican Congress is simple: either surrender or accept total blame for everything bad in America. And who was in charge that created all the bad before the Republicans got in there? They had their hands tied. Krugman doesn't come right out and use the word surrender, but that is his intent, he writes. Will the Arizona massacre make our discourse less toxic? It's really up to the GOP leaders. You see, it is Republicans and conservatives who are to blame for opposing the Obama agenda, for openly speaking the truth about the many assaults on freedom and individual liberties that flow from the Obama White House like water down the Amazon. By not accepting the reality of the brilliance of Obama and crew, it is the Republicans who shoulder all the responsibility, shoulder all of it. All the GOP has to do is tone down their opposition, accept compromise readily, and push all those noisy, rambunctious citizens to the fringes. Ignore people and their discontent. The super brains in the ivory towers of Harvard and Yale will fix everything when they're taught by the very Marxist socialist professors. Both examples of the hyperventilating of the left are but a taste of the coming weeks. We can depend on the legacy media and their cronies on the left to feed the American people a non-stop diet of guilty by association, dire warnings, and character assassinations. One leftist blogger went so far as to say it was natural for such a thing to have happened in Arizona, the state that gave America a presidential candidate who advocated extremism. The slur was aimed at the late Senate Barry Goldwater. As always, the writer took a few words out of context to arrive at his preconceived conclusion, but a full reading of Senator Goldwater's 1964 Clarion call is worth the effort. Senator Goldwater said, "I would remind you that extremism in defense of liberty is no vice, and that moderation in pursuit of justice is no virtue." It is no vice to loudly and starkly defend liberty in America against those who aim to steal it, and it is of no virtue to gently and moderately pursue justice against all violators of accepted law. The American people will not be silenced and intimidated by this pretense that somehow their political rhetoric caused the tragedy in Arizona. Now, more than ever, it is time to voice the legitimate objections against a government that turns every tragedy into an opportunity to seize power. Representative Clyburn's call to rethink perimeters on free speech should only encourage right-thinking Americans to raise their voices even higher in support of their Constitution. Bill Wilson is the president of Americans for the Limited Government. See, this is what they're trying to do. These creatures on the Democratic side are still trying to boss their power around. Even though they're out of power, they're going and using every trick in the book, every socialist trick in the book, to pull things over the government and people so they can continue their socialist Marxist rhetoric over our Constitution and the American people. These people need to be tried for treason against America and for violation of their oath to the very paper they swore an oath to, the Constitution. How do they continue to do this without nobody saying or stopping them or putting them on trial for it? They are, I guess the Republicans must be doing the same thing, and they don't want fingers pointed back at them. They point fingers at the Democrats for what they're doing. Man. Has everything just went wrong, or is it just wrong? Man. Until next time, this is Spellbinder saying we better stop this wild government, this government unbridled. It's out of control. It's running wild, and it's just anything that's happening, either real or imaginary, they're taking advantage of it. Leave nothing, no incident to go unused for something else. Man, until next time, be good at it. This is Spellbinder. Good day.